All right, let's talk about business strategy. Specifically, we're going to dive into the work of the legendary Michael Porter. Now, you probably think you know what strategy is all about, right? It's about crushing the competition, being number one, winning. But what if I told you that entire way of thinking is probably the single biggest mistake a business can make? Let's get into it.
This quote just hits you right between the eyes, doesn't it? It completely challenges that gut instinct that business is like a sport, where there's one gold medal winner and everyone else is a loser. Porter's whole argument is that this mindset isn't just a little off, it's actually incredibly destructive for everyone involved.
So why is trying to be the best such a disaster? Well, think about it. When every company is chasing the exact same goal, they all start doing the same things. They benchmark each other, they copy each other's features, and pretty soon they're only competing on one thing: price. And that is just a brutal, ugly race to the bottom where nobody makes any money.
This slide really lays it all out. On the one hand, you've got competing to be the best. It forces everyone onto this one, single, narrow path. But on the other hand, you have competing to be unique. This is about finding your own path. It's about creating a special kind of value for a certain group of customers that nobody else is serving in quite the same way. One path destroys profits. The other one is where you actually create them.
And there's actually a name for this whole mess. It's called strategic convergence. It's what happens when an entire industry gets hypnotized by this idea of being the best. Everyone starts to look and sound the same, and when customers can't tell the difference between you and your competitors, they just pick the cheapest option. And poof, there go the profits for the entire industry.
And that brings us to a really key point. We're all taught to chase market share, right? Or to be the fastest growing company. But Porter argues those are just vanity metrics. They feel good, but they're pretty meaningless if they don't lead to actual sustainable profits. They should be the result of a great strategy, not the goal itself.
So here it is. This is the real North Star of any good strategy: a superior return on invested capital, or ROIC. It sounds fancy, but it's simple. For every single dollar you put into your business, how much profit do you get back out? The whole point of strategy is to make that number way higher than your competitors and higher than it costs you to get that capital in the first place.
Okay, so you want to get that superior return. Great, but how do you do it? Well, you can't just stare at your own belly button. You first have to understand the game you're playing. And that is where Porter's famous 5 forces framework comes in. It's the essential toolkit.
It's really just like sports. You wouldn't try to come up with a winning play if you didn't know the rules of the game, the size of the field, or who you're playing against. The 5 forces give you the rules of competition. They show you the hidden structure that determines who makes money and who doesn't in any industry.
The first force is the one we all think of, right? It's the rivalry, the head-to-head, down in the trenches, fighting with your direct competitors. When that rivalry is intense, especially when it turns into price wars, it just sucks the profit right out of the industry for everybody. It's a zero-sum game.
Next up, you have to look at the power of your customers or buyers. If you have a few huge customers that make up most of your business, they can basically dictate terms. They can demand lower prices or more features for free, and that pressure squeezes your profit margins down to nothing.
And you've got to look at the other side of that coin too, the power of your suppliers. If there's only one company that makes a critical part you need for your products, guess what? They hold all the cards. They can jack up their prices, which raises your costs and, you guessed it, eats into your profitability.
Now, substitutes are a little sneaky. They're not your direct competitors, but they solve the same underlying problem for the customer. A classic example is email as a substitute for the post office. The very existence of a good substitute puts a hard ceiling on how much you can ever hope to charge. And last but not least, you have to look over your shoulder at the threat of new people joining the party. If your industry is making good money and it's cheap and easy to set up a competing business, what we call low barriers to entry, then new companies are going to flood in. That new competition will drive prices down and compete away all the excess profits.
Okay, so once you've used the 5 forces to map out the industry, you know the terrain, you know where the dangers are. The next job is to find your own unique, defensible, and profitable spot within that landscape. This is all about building a real, sustainable, competitive advantage.
And according to Porter, there are really only 2 ways to get a competitive advantage. That's it. You can either be different in a way that lets you charge a higher price, that's called differentiation, or you can figure out how to operate with a lower cost structure than anyone else, which is called cost leadership. You either charge more or you spend less.
So where does this advantage actually come from? It's not just a nice idea on a slide. It has to exist in the real world, in the things your company actually does.
And the tool for that is the value chain. It's basically a map of all the individual activities a company performs to create its product or service. Everything from logistics to marketing to R&D. Your unique advantage is hidden somewhere in that chain.
And this is where the rubber really meets the road. It leads to two simple paths to create that unique position. Path 1, you can do the same basic activities as your competitors, but you figure out a totally different, better, or cheaper way to do them. Or, Path 2, you can choose to do a completely different set of activities that your rival aren't doing at all.
Now, this all sounds good in theory, right? But let's be honest, almost every company has a mission statement that sounds like a strategy. How do you know if you've got the real deal or just a bunch of marketing fluff? To figure that out, we turn to Porter's 5 essential tests that any real strategy has to pass.
Let's run through this checklist. First, a unique value proposition. Are you serving a different need for a different customer? Second, a tailored value chain. Are your day-to-day activities custom-built to deliver that unique value? Third, and this one is huge, trade-offs. What are you deliberately choosing not to do? Fourth is fit. Do all your activities link together and reinforce each other, like a jigsaw puzzle that's impossible for competitors to copy? And finally, continuity. Are you willing to stick with it? Real strategy takes years to build. It's not about chasing every new trend.
Now, once you have those 5 tests in your head, it becomes so much easier to spot all the common mistakes and bad habits that companies fall into when they talk about strategy. Let's look at a few things that sound strategic but really aren't.
You hear this stuff in meetings all the time. Our strategy is to be number 1. Nope, that's a goal, not a strategy. Or our strategy is M&A. Again, nope, that's a potential action, not a strategy. And as we've already covered, chasing growth just for the sake of growth usually ends up destroying a clear strategic position and, with it, a lot of value.
And this brings us to what might be the single most powerful and most counterintuitive idea in all of Michael Porter's work. If you take away just one thing, let it be this. The essence of a true strategy is making trade-offs. It's about saying no. It's about deliberately choosing to be bad at some things so that you can be absolutely undeniably excellent at the things that matter most to your specific customers.
So I'll just leave you with that one question to think about. For any company you work for, or even for your own career, it's not just about what you're trying to do. It's about what you are actively, consciously, and strategically choosing not to do. Because that choice, that's where real strategy is born. Thanks for digging into this with me.